The time has finally come where I get to make the video talking about pass, rallies, and garrisons in Call of Dragons, because my alliance held a choke point with 2 passes. We had one, the enemy had one, and there were 2 alliances that they had 20 billion power, and we had 1 alliance, 13.5 billion power, and we actually held them off. And the entire time, we only lost 2 flags. I think it was only 2. And we have just millions of merits stacked up in these rallies and garrisons. And some of these reports were absolutely massive. Others were, of course, smaller. Many were swarmed like through the freaking roof. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the choices that were made for the defense and the offense. And, well, let's get after it. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and today's video is sponsored by the makers of Call of Dragons. And this area currently looks barren because all the territory was deleted going into the final fight for the dragon. But leading up to that point, we had a very, very intense 2v1 at these passes over here. We had more territory, and they had all this land flagged and forted up and keeps and the turrets and the whole 9 yards, baby. And I actually live streamed this pass opening where we got 1 pass on the left, they got 1 pass on the right, which made for a symmetric and interesting situation, except for one thing. I say symmetric, but because they had 2 alliances, they could double rally us, and we, of course, cannot double rally them. Our allies were in a completely different starting zone, so they really didn't have a reasonable way of getting to us, and we instead, I believe in conversation with our allies, agreed that the better place for them to go was into Hollandale, which turned out to be very correct. So we took a 2v1, 13.5 billion power for us to the 20 billion power of our foes at these passes over here. Now, there's a lot to talk about with the rally meta in Call of Dragons, and I'll have footage flashing up on the screen from the fighting. Presumably, I'll have that zoomed in so you can kind of enjoy the action at times, but there's only so much I want to reveal about the strategic choices that were being made. What I will say is that we felt like we were trading, but very positive, and our enemies felt like they were trading very positive. I will leave it to you to determine what you think the reality actually is. What I want to do is talk about the rally and garrison meta for a minute, okay? There are several commanders that heroes rather, we need to be talking about when it comes to rallying and garrisoning in Call of Dragons. First and foremost, obviously Goresh and Chisgule make for an amazing rally. They're designed to be a good rally, except not exactly. The weirdness of an infantry rally is it has no DPS, so it neither takes a lot of damage nor deals a lot of damage, and that's kind of weird. Basically, a pass that's getting rallied by a Goresh and Chisgule can be infinitely reinforced. So is there even really any value to running the rally? I will argue yes, absolutely. It all depends on what your opponent does in response to being rallied, and of course they do need to fill their pass. That said, other rallies that are higher DPS include things like Sindrian and Freygar. Well, Sindrian is obviously designed to be a rally lead, but the problem is that the march is gosh darn squishy. You swarm it down and it will fall. All right, well, if you still wanted to rally with marksmen, what could you do? Well, you could use Hosk and Kanara, and this, in my estimation, is the safest rally to run. Hosk and Kanara are very difficult to swarm. It is extremely punishing if you try to swarm this down, and it does good DPS. So in my eyes, this is kind of the all-star rally combo. We did see some mage rallies with the new mages, Tohar and Bertrand, but I think those were fairly unimpressive results. Like, you'd think, oh, well, if they put infantry in the garrison, we'll get them good. But these are also extremely swarmable. So really, one of the only rallies that you just can't deal with other than to take it is the Goresh Chisgule. You really can't run many counter rallies effectively against it either, because Goresh and Chisgule actually just ramp up in their effectiveness when multiple things are hitting them. So given that Goresh and Chisgule was the meta, or was a good rally choice, it's weird that it also was a good garrison choice. And the reason is, once again, that it would live forever. And it was difficult to swarm, aka multi-rally. So you could put a Goresh and Chisgule into a pass and feel much safer overnight with that in the garrison than something that is a bit more fragile but punchy, like, for example, a Theodore garrison. Theodore with Bakshi or Theodore with Ferondil has really great punch, but not as good of a staying power as infantry do. okay? And similarly, the new mages, when we used them before Tohar got buffed, they did great, but they take damage, a lot of it, and deal a lot of it. So you might trade better with this, but is your goal to trade or is it to hold? And if your goal is to hold, this is where Goresh and Chisgule really shine. The other thing we did that was a bit of a mistake is that we rallied with Goresh and Hosk, and we were shredding. And then the enemy started rallying us with Goresh and Hosk, and that was kind of annoying because we basically showed them, hey, this rally's really good. And then they started using it. GG. We'd have been better off not teaching them that that was actually a thing, quite frankly. But anyways, let's get a look here at some reports, all right? And I have many of these. I will go through a whole bunch of them, and then I'll talk a bit about pet choices. All right, so I have dozens of these reports, truly dozens of these reports where passes are getting rallied and garrisoned. But one thing I'll say that like took our opponents a little bit of time to figure out, which, hey, yo, I wasn't about to tell them, is that the pass with Goresh is actually doing area of effect damage, which means we were killing troops that were standing near the pass. So like there's actually a shocking number of troops that we killed that were just standing nearby. It's a part of the reason why we were trading, I felt, very positive, even if this is going negative, which like, yeah, no, I mean, here we are going negative, right? When you start to add in all the incidental kills, things get very interesting. And there are times where like, yeah, you go negative, but you held the pass and you're still very happy because you held the pass. Okay. So anyways, these reports are very long. And like, I don't know if I scroll through the entire thing here, but there's so many things that influence the result. The talents influence the result. Who is the defender and the attacker influences the result. And although I said Goresh and Chisgule is a good garrison, make no mistake about it, there actually are some very important skills here that are only relevant in the open field, like guerrilla tactics. I think only works stacking up your attack when you are actually rallying, but not if you're in a garrison. And of course, Goresh's fourth skill works when you're rallying, not when you're garrisoning, right? So there's definitely some advantages to being the attacker with a Goresh and Chisgule. Now, in this case, this Goresh is not maxed, which is definitely a little bit suboptimal, but like pretty sure that over the course of the next couple of days, they end up maxing it out here. So there's a bunch of things that we did to improve our trade quality, all right? And one of those things is actually that I ended up moving in on a really fat pet. I mean, I went all freaking in. Oh, by the way, Lily Velen. Hey, yo, that ain't it, broski. That ain't it. That's for sure. Especially, hey, yo. At the start of the rallies, there were many times where I was like, our opponents are not using a competent pet. Like they have not made competent pet choices. And I'm not being critical of them. Like genuinely, like that is just like my honest, like I literally would say the same of my alliance members. I'm like, that is not a competent pet. It's just like, I'm just going to say it, man. I literally, like my alliance members will tell you, oh God, I swarmed the pass or something. But yeah, like, dude, what? Oh, no. This must be a rally I was in. This must be a counter rally. Yeah, the Hosk Kanara freaking slaps, bro. It's so good. And people don't know what they're doing and they swarm it and they just get destroyed, man. They get absolutely destroyed. Here's 199 dead for us to 153 for them. And you might look at this and go, oh no, you guys are getting wrecked. But like the pace of troop loss in this game is literally like 10 to 20 times slower than the pace of troop loss in Rise of Kingdoms, which is what I'm used to. So like these losses are extremely minimal. And then once again, as you scroll down this report and you see what the area of effect damage has done here, it starts to even up like very quickly, right? Like the dead count suddenly is in our favor, just scrolling through here, all right? And that's tip of the iceberg for these reports, and there's so many of them, all right? So again, we felt like we were trading positive, they felt like they were trading positive, and God, do you want me to show you like all of these reports? There's like so many of them. I think that at one point we ended up doing the math on some of these reports. Like this is a 500,000 merit report. It's not that big, but like on the 5 mil merit reports, we started to do some of like the math on it. And also you can see, by the way, that the heroes here are not leveled up to optimal levels yet for both sides. Level 59 is the break point for Goresh, where you get very critical talents. So you really want to have that. And oh man, God, there's so much I want to talk about. In these 5 million plus merit reports, I'll jump to some of those. I have so many of these, right? In these reports, we added up the Sev wounds, and typically we were trading 1 to 1.5 positive in our favor for Sev wounds. So like we felt like these were going great when you factor in everything else that was cooking. These for us, these rallies that we did were extremely important and valuable, I felt. And I really don't want to spill all the details because I think we'll keep some of the information of how our team works within our team. But here is the pet that I started with. All right. Now I'm using a venomous lizard. And the reason I'm using a venomous lizard should be pretty obvious, but in case it isn't, when they are swarming a rally like crazy, the Bruin Bear doesn't deal damage to enemies that are far away. It only hits enemies at close range. So when they're behind the pass, you're not going to hit them. So the venomous lizard is going to be doing poison wherever they are. And that is really powerful. So that's why the venomous lizard is the pick here, not the Bruin Bear, even though in the field, if you could get your enemies close up to you, a Bruin Bear will be a better pick. All right. Now, I'm going to end up making some major pet upgrades over the course of all these rallies that I end up doing. But if I just sort of zoom in on some of the bigger reports here, I mean, you can just see as you scroll through this, these are absolutely massive reports. And, oh no, we lost a deads trade by 20,000 units. I mean, some of that could be explained by T4 versus T5 losses. It's hard to know exactly without drilling into it. But then once again, when you scroll through all the other things that sort of happened over the course of this, where we're getting swarmed by people that probably shouldn't be doing that. Some should, some shouldn't. We end up trading positive, and we did the math on it. And like for us, it was a solid positive in how it was going. So we just kept doing it. And at one point, I'm actually really disappointed that I ran a rally on this pass that was like over 4 hours long. And it's so tragic that the report had so much stuff in it that it was too large and the game did not send it. We literally had to reach out to VIP support and we were like, hey, what happened? We didn't get a report. It's like it never happened, but I definitely have dead troops from it. And they were like, we're sorry, the report is actually just too large. And like, as you see me scrolling through the top part of the report with all the marches listed there, like, yeah, like you can get why it's too large. Now, Zus was the other top tier infantry player from our group, and he had a 2-star Venom Lizard with the Talon skill, but unfortunately, he only had a level 3 on his Spirit Bone Torque, whereas I had a level 5. And you had better believe that 3% more damage dealt and 3% less damage taken, that's a 6% all damage swing, is big. It's a big number. I guess technically it will be a 3% swing, but 6% of value total, whatever. You know what I'm saying. It's big. It's a major influence on the outcome of the battle. And so once my pet gets really suited up, man, things start really cooking. Now, when I say once my pet got suited up, you may be like, whoa, Chisgule, what happened here? Suddenly your pet looks very different. And yes, it does. So let me show you, well, I'll just do it from here. And then we'll go get a deep dive later. But I ended up regenerating the pet, and I was out of potions. So like every day I would regenerate this pet to try to make it better, because if I'm the rally lead, it's my sacred responsibility to my team to optimize the heck out of everything and min-max. And I got an 8 skill slot pet with pretty good attributes. And so I talked about it with the professor. Big shout out to the professor on like, hey, like let's talk about how we build this pet now. And there were a couple changes that I made. One is that I took Forceful Infection. And a part of the reason I took this skill is because I want to poison the heck out of all the folks swarming the rally. So we're all in on just really shredding the swarmers, going less for the trade against the Garrison and more for the trade against the other players. Of course, 1-star Wild Counterstrike is critical, along with the 2-star Counterstrike to get extra counterattacks going. We went with Tooth and Claw, 2-star, to crank out extra damage from both Wild Counterstrike and also Infection. From there, I already mentioned the super, or rather Forceful Infection. I took a 2-star hit back to increase the crit rate on my counters, because like, again, it's all about just shredding the people that are swarming me. And Blood for Blood, 1.73% crit rate, just going for as much crit as I can on those counterattacks. And I took something I would never take this on a Venomous Lizard, but because I'm rallying and garrisoning, I wanted to put extra damage onto the Garrison. or onto the rally that I was defending against, and that's Fierce Attack. And it's pretty obvious what this is doing. I mean, it's just damage factor periodically, right? And this also gets enhanced by Tooth and Claw. So that was kind of my goal there, was to really move all in on like, hey, I am rallying with this pet. I would never put this skill on a Venomous Lizard otherwise, but if I'm rallying, I want that damage. 272 damage factor, bro. 40% chance to happen when you go through a skill cycle. And you'd better believe that when I'm getting swarmed like crazy, those skill cycles are really fast. Like once every 6 seconds, I have an opportunity to trigger this, which is pretty legit. So I went all in, baby. I went all in on this pet. So I'll show you the pet in a bit, but let me just cruise through more of these reports. But simply getting that pet in order really started to shift the nature of these reports to be pretty positive. And if they want to hold this pass, they just have to sit there and take it, man. For literally hours, they just have to take it. And it just is what it is. You either take it or you lose the pass. And that's the difficulty, by the way, of not having a proper Garrison captain or not having a better Garrison captain than your opponent, is you just have to take these trades. And like, obviously a lot of this trade is Sev wounds, but like, fine, I don't care, man. Like, that's great. Sev wounds is great. And here's the thing is, still I will make the argument, like, our opponents were saying, like, how do you guys still have infantry? And I lost maybe 300,000 infantry. But like in Rise of Kingdoms, I'll go from like 6 million infantry to like 1 million in a KVK. So like 300,000 infantry is like, this is like nothing in the grand scheme of things. The rate of troop loss on infantry rallies and garrisons is so shockingly slow. It is unbelievable. For our purposes, it was perfect. Okay. Now, getting a look at that pet, as I promised, let me show you here what I was working with. We go to the pet enclosure, and here's my Venomous Lizard. All right. Really good strength roll on this guy. Decent agility roll. It's yellow, but this is honestly just decent. 351 is not a very good growth rating, and a pretty mediocre endurance rating and a pretty mediocre luck rating. But I figured going from 6 skill slots to 8 skill slots was worth having worse attributes. Like literally before, my infection was doing more damage at a base level, but once I put forceful infection in, then it was doing more damage. You see what I mean? So like I had to sort of use one of my skill slots to make this do more damage than it was doing before because the attribute was lower, but like overall it is better. And then on top of this, right, like I added Fierce Attack. And so net positive on this pet overall, even though it was incremental, it was a step up for sure. Plus I committed more 2-star skills, which like really kind of changes things. And I even relocated Blood for Blood to the end, which you might have noticed and thought, why would you do that? And that is because if I wanted to continue to regenerate, to try to get like an even better one, because again, like if I'm rallying and garrisoning, I feel I have a sacred responsibility to my team to min-max the ever-living hell out of whatever it is that I'm doing, because they're funneling their dead troops through me. So it is my sacred responsibility to do the absolute best that I possibly can, even if it is suboptimal for my account. At the scale of my alliance, it is my sacred duty. And that's really how I feel about it, right? So like I was regenerating, even though this was my pet, in case I ended up with a 7 skill slot pet with better attributes. And I was going for that. I was literally going for that, okay? And you saw me just do it because like, maybe I'll do better, right? Even though that's not something I would recommend to most people. For most people, if you had this pet, you would never regenerate it ever again. You're done. Move on, do something else. Seriously, right? Like I'd be better off regenerating this pet, even though I probably should not even regenerate this pet because it's pretty nuts. All right. So getting back to the passes, the one and only time we almost lost this pass was when the following move happened. And I might get a clip of this. Maybe someone else recorded it. It was like 5 a.m. for me and I had woken up and I was like, I'm just going to look at the game. You know how it is. If you know, you know, you savages out there, you know that like, you just have to look. And I open up the game and I look, and the enemy team is rallying our pass. And they took a huge ball. They marched through this pass. They walked past all our defenses, which we had these keeps down. They walk right past the keeps. The keeps can't stop them. The turrets don't do anything. And they walk and they put a huge ball of troops in front of our pass on this side. So we physically could no longer reinforce the pass. And they had a behemoth rolling. That was dicey. Only reason we held this pass is because it had infantry. We killed off their troops. We stabilized the pass, and it was business as usual. Damn. They did that once or twice, and you get full sad faced, but they could have taken the pass in that instance, and it got dicey, okay? And that is why you garrison with infantry. And that knowledge alone is worth a like and subscribe, because the amount of information I gave you in this video is actually jaw-dropping for the success of your team. If you actually take in what I have been saying, bro, it is a force multiplier for your effectiveness. And that's without me even really revealing all of the secrets, because at the end of the day, like, I don't know, man, I can't share everything, because then our opponents are going to use that stuff. And then my opponents always have more information than I do if I share everything I know. Is what it is. All right. So if you enjoyed the vid, throw a like on here, consider subscribing. This pass fight was absolutely insane. But you would think that, oh, well, if you could hold these guys off 2v1, then like you're going to have an easy time in the final zone. No. Yet another thing I'll teach before I wrap up this video is that choke points like this are insanely easy to defend compared to big open zones that are fresh and everybody's got an opportunity to build in. And we could have lost the final zone. There was a moment where I was pretty worried, but I'll cover that and some of the other fights that took place here in a separate video. If you enjoyed this one, toss a like on here, subscribe to the channel. If you want an overview of the fighting in this season, I'll have a card in the end screen for that one. And until next time, have fun smashing the kingdom.